And he said, we were the only ones who would stand by the Constitution. Well, I guess Ron, he did some things a little bit more careful than George Hansen, who spent about 10 years in jail and just about ruined his health, or Larry McDonald, who disappeared into Russia. I don't think he's dead, or at least I don't think he was dead when the plane went down. I think the plane landed safely, but once again, one of those false reports that gets turned around. Phil Crane wasn't quite as publicized, but he got caught up in a thing with being his brother or something was some kind of alcoholism deal, but he got brought down with bad publicity also. So they have ways of getting rid of you that way, but there are also some more disgusting ways. And George Bush Sr. has been implicated in at least 3 books that I've read, was something called pedophilia. And apparently he enjoys this. That's a disgusting subject to even bring up. But Big George was affiliated with, how many read the book called The Franklin Cover-Up? Okay, well then you know where I'm coming from. But that was only the first. There have been 2 others since. And out of Lincoln, Nebraska, there was a Franklin Savings and Loan. And a man by the name of Larry King, not the talk show host, but he was an up-and-coming Republican. A black man, had quite a wonderful baritone voice, and he sang at the 1984 or 8, or both Republican conventions, the Star Spangled Banner. And the Larry King apparently was Bush's go-between over in Lincoln, Nebraska, and he was running the Franklin Savings and Loan, and they were robbing it. But worse, they were kidnapping boys out of Boys Town, Nebraska. And one who's a survivor was able to, and Ted Gunderson, by the way, worked very closely on this case, and he was my source of a lot of this information. But one of the young men, survivor, was able to tell later the details of the White House, having been there, and described it perfectly. There was a British TV program that actually did a documentary. I have it, thanks to Ted, and was really an expose, and was booked to be on the, was it Discovery Channel? Yeah, Discovery Channel, and it got canceled just a few days before. I mean, actually, after it was advertised in the paper and in the TV guide, it was canceled. It was that close to being shown. Well, that's the power of legal tender. See, they can do this. So here we got a congressman that goes to Washington, a Mr. Clean. And he goes to a party and somebody slips a Mickey in his drink. And the next thing he knows, he's in a hotel room upstairs in the hotel room, and there's a 12-year-old boy in bed with him. And there's a video camera over there also. But the film's already been taken out, they just left the camera there. And now they come by and they visit this congressman or this senator a week or 2 later in his office, and they say, well, Congressman, I guess we know how you're going to vote on so-and-so bill next week, don't we? He said, you sure do. And now, I can't say in particulars, but I would project that this is the sort of thing, not necessarily in that detail, but that's the sort of thing that happened to Newt Gingrich, this rising star of the Republican Party who suddenly disappeared and left Washington. They had something on him, you can bet. And every time you watch something like this happen and somebody disappears or said, oh, I think I'm going to quit because I'm going to resign because I want to spend more time with my family. Yeah, that's usually the great write-off. It's the power of legal tender. Somebody was able to spend this kind of money. And you know what? A hitman costs a lot less. And they will stoop to that also. So I guess I took more time than I intended to on that particular subject, but I want to impress upon you, it's the legal tender, stupid. And I wrote a column about that, because a reference back to a Democratic guy, said it's the money, stupid. No, it's more than the money. It's the kind of money. And we solved that problem, and we solved so many more of the others. Well, the Pearl Harbor. Most of us know today that Pearl Harbor was a setup. There have been several books written on that, and as Jim was talking about, the Kennedy assassination. Anybody who believes that Lee Harvey Oswald shot John F. Kennedy is just either totally ignorant on the subject, has read nothing and only listened to the news each November, or he's one of the insiders who is paid to keep the lie promoted. And this is one by the name of Gerald Posner, wrote a book called Case Closed back in mid-90s. And it's such a distortion, and the case closed because it was Lee Harvey Oswald and nobody else. Now, I really am sorry to see a man that I respected very much as a prosecutor and as a writer, and Vincent Bugliosi, and for him to write a 1,600-page piece of stupidity like he did. I said at the time it came out last year, Bugliosi has been bought off. Someone from the government has paid him, has fronted the money for him to do this book on the Kennedy assassination because it's been about 15 years since the last one came out. And they have to keep programming the new generations. But I'm all for Vince now. He's back on my good sheet because of what he's doing in Vermont. And I wrote a story this week, but it didn't get in. I hope it'll get in next week's issue. And for those of you who aren't aware, he wrote a new book called The Prosecution of George W. Bush for Murder. And, right. And he pointed out in that book that any prosecutor, any court in any state in the Union could prosecute Bush because men have been taken out of those places. They were snowed by Bush's lies. They joined the military, went over and got killed. So because of him, they were murdered for something that was not true. Well, that's, interesting stuff, but, as I read it, I said, well, that's pretty good, Vince, but who are you going to get to do it? Oh, he got one to do it. He's got a new ally. It's a woman in the state of Vermont who is running for Attorney General, and last Thursday, she had sitting right next to her at her campaign podium, Vince Bugliosi. And she told a little bit of what I just told you, and she said, you vote for me, you elect me Attorney General, and I will personally prosecute George W. Bush for murder. and that's what they said. And she said, besides that, I'm going to appoint a special prosecutor to handle the case. Guess who that is? Vincent Bugliosi. Now, for those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, he was the one who prosecuted Charles Manson family back in 1970, 71. So I mean, he's really he's good at what he does. And as I say, the only black mark against him in my book is what he did about the Kennedy assassination. But as I say, I defined that piece of stupidity. Anyhow, if you want to know what really happened at the Kennedy assassination, or if you have any doubts in your mind about it being any kind of conspiracy, I want you to find a series of books by John Armstrong. And there's a big one now that he's done. Have you seen the thick book, Jim, the new one? It's like 50-something bucks. I mean, you really got to be a serious researcher. The name of it is Harvey and Lee. And he shows how the two Oswalds were brought together as teenagers. Now let me digress here a second. I've been on this case since 1964. I first read a book in about April of '64, the first book that ever came out about the Kennedy assassinations, called Who Killed Kennedy by Thomas Buchanan. Have you got that one? Yeah, he's got them all. Well, it didn't answer very many questions, but it sure put a lot of questions in my mind. I said, boy, that's intriguing. I'm just a young guy. And then that following September of '64, the Warren omission, I love that, it came out. And I said, wow, now I'm really hooked. And I've been hooked for life on that case. And so for some 20, I'd say about 30 years, there was a lot of things that bugged me about the case, things that never were answered. But the one that bugged me the most